let's agree to not do this again, where the end of the fundraising quarter is midnight the night before we record this episode, because it's so much easier when everybody else does our work for us and does all the research on who raised what and which candidates look like they're viable and which ones don't. But since we're recording this Thursday, right after the deadline, we had to do all that work ourselves. So if it seems like I'm a little cranky, it's just because I've been looking at D2s and federal disclosure forms all day, and my eyes are a little cross-eyed. But we've got really good information for you, our audience, this week. So you did the right thing by tuning in. By the time we roll this out, hopefully we'll be among the first to give you some of this information, but it will certainly be among the first to analyze what it means. And that's why we're here doing the smoke-filled room. Let me introduce our guests for the week. We've got Mike Shackel. He's the Lemont Township Supervisor. He's a Republican committeeman there. You're the Township committeeman, right?
That's correct, Lemont.
Perfect. I want to make sure I get that right. You're a financial consultant. You served on the High School Board of Education, the president of the Lemont Chamber of Commerce. You're bringing a lot of perspectives here to the podcast. First-time guest. We're glad to have you. How's it going?
Good, thank you. I'm happy to be here. I've watched your show many times. I'm excited to be here and hopefully can contribute something outstanding.
Well, listen, whatever you can contribute will be more than what Chris brings on a weekly basis, so it's okay. We also have with us returning Collin Moseley, the second coolest Collin in the state of Illinois. He's the director of the Illinois Freedom Caucus. What's going on, buddy?
Hey, good to be here. And a little known fact, I'm also a township trustee. So outside of the Freedom Caucus gig, happy to be a local official too, and good to be here on Smoke-Filled Room.
Nice. Well, you got to give Lane that information so I can start getting your bio correct when I do these introductions. I just read it, so it's not my fault. Speaking of just reading bios, Lane wrote here this week. Michael is here this week, but Chris decided to just phone it in. I don't know. That's just Lane saying that. Michael, I don't know if that's true or not. What do you think?
Hey, we're gonna bring the heat, don't you think?
Collin, if you want me to phone in, I can. I can go out, play 9 holes of golf, and I'll call into the podcast. And you can
how different would that be from how you did last week? I mean, it'd be the same.
Wow. Yeah.
I have been the most consistent contributor to this podcast.
Consistently bad.
This podcast is nothing without me, Collin. Every week I'm not on. You have a list of comments. Where's Chris? Where's Chris? I'm not watching. Chris isn't here.
Everybody misses the comedic relief. I mean, it's important to keep us. These discussions can get a little in depth sometimes. So, having somebody we can make fun of really makes it easy.
Send in the clowns, Collin. That's what I'm here for.
There we go. Let's get into fundraising. I mentioned it during the intro. We got a lot of news this week, but we got to start here. If you're like us and you're a bit of a geek or a nerd, whichever term you decide you'd like to use for yourself, then you've been pouring through disclosure reports because we just finished 2025's third quarter, both state and federal. And so we're going to go through what we've seen and what we've learned from those reports. Keep in mind, we don't necessarily have everything yet. Some news I'm sure will break over the next couple of days that we don't have access to. But based on what we've seen now, I'm going to take us through this section by section, and then open it up if there's any races that we haven't talked about that you guys want to talk about, give you guys a catch-all at the end. But let's start with federal races. Let's start at the top. The Illinois Senate race, you've got Raja, who continues to raise a couple $1 billion every quarter. But the reports are that Kelly and Stratton both raised limited amounts, and in Stratton's case, spent a ton of money. And it looks like a lot of people are starting to talk about, will they have cash on hand that they need to be able to run the race to win this primary on the Democratic side? I mean, Raja has $18 million in the bank at the end of the quarter. It's obviously a significant amount. Meanwhile, you've got Robin Kelly's got a good amount because she had it stored up, just under $2 million. But Julianna Stratton is trailing both of them. Let's see here. I'm trying to find my notes. Why is this in here? 920K cash on hand, so less than $1 million. On the Republican side, Don Tracy has over $2 million on hand. Every other Republican candidate either hasn't filed or has like 20,000 or less. So the Republican side, it's pretty clear that Don Tracy is the candidate on the Republican side. On the Democratic side, it's starting to get real interesting here. Raja's spending tons of money. Obviously, it's showing up in the polls. The question is, will Pritzker come in here and save Stratton, save her campaign, and push her over the finish line? I'm curious what you guys think.
I think that is the $1 million question. Literally, not figuratively, literally $1 million question.
At this point, it's probably the $30-40 million question.
Right. I mean, how much does the governor believe in Julianna, and is he willing to cash in? I mean, it looks terrible for him if she loses a primary, really bad for him. But at the same time, can he afford to weigh in and still lose? I'm waiting for Robin Kelly to drop out of this race. I mean, I don't know what she's doing at this point. It seems to me that she's just trying to hold out for some hope, but I don't know that she does anything except make sure that Julianna Stratton loses the primary to Raja by staying in it. And maybe there's beef there that I'm unaware of, and she wants to twist that knife. So yeah, that's my thoughts on the U.S. Senate race. We'll see.
Well, I think it's pretty clear that Raja's plan is kind of to build that name ID up, insulate himself in the off chance because if Pritzker decides to pour a bunch of money in, maybe he's at 40% in the polls. Pritzker pours the money in, and then that's not enough to get her over the top.
Well, and keep in mind, too, when you look at these polls that are taken, they're early, obviously. Yeah. But something you're going to want to identify is, we talk about this all the time on this podcast, elections are determined by two factors, propensity and affinity. Polls only test affinity. That's why we always say turnout is key, because a candidate can over or underperform their polls. And based on the way Raja has earned his support through lots of TV ads and digital ads and texting and everything else, that's the type of support that's typically a mile wide but an inch deep. And so when you see the support that Stratton's going to have, it's going to be a lot of party-based, union-based. This is support that's rock solid, no matter whether the weather is good or bad on election day or in the weeks leading up to it. And so more than likely, Stratton will overperform the polls. Raja will underperform the polls. So keep that in mind. That yes, Raja has a lead, but after spending millions of dollars, if I'm his team, I would have wanted to see a much bigger lead at this stage of the race.
Mm-hmm.
No, I definitely agree. And to Moseley's point earlier about the thing he might be missing is that I've always maintained that Robin Kelly is the Manchurian candidate. That she's in this race for the sole purpose of taking away African-American female votes from Julianna Stratton and pushing that support to Raja. Because, listen, Robin Kelly, she was with Dick Durbin. She was Dick Durbin's party chairman of the state. Dick Durbin does not like J.B. Pritzker. Dick Durbin does not want to see J.B. Pritzker's lieutenant governor succeed him in the U.S. Senate. So that's what this isn't me giving you guys inside baseball. This is other than obviously the Pritzker-Durbin split, but this is based on my own logical reasoning that this is the only reason why Robin Kelly would be in this race, or she just wants to go out in style. I mean, maybe she just doesn't want to run for re-election again. She's like, listen, I'm sitting on $2 million. Why not go out with a bang? Let's run for U.S. Senate. Let the chips fall where they may and see if I can pull this thing off. If she wins, then she's going to be the next U.S. Senator from the state of Illinois in her mind. If she loses,
Chris, there is some credence to that. I mean, she raised less than $300K this quarter, so it could just be, to your point, I got a couple mil in the bank. I don't want to run again. I'll run for Senate, get my name out there, have a little fun, and call it a day. I mean, I believe your first point is right, that she's in there to take votes away from Stratton so that Raja's the nominee. But there is a chance, based on her fundraising numbers, that you're right, that she's just like, this is going to be a good capstone for me. I probably won't win, but, I'll have some fun.
There's also the redistricting thing. Sorry, Mike, to jump in again. I wonder, do you think that there's any chance that she sees her district getting cut up if they actually change the maps in Illinois?
I'm not assuming they're going to change the maps, but that's just not going to happen.
I also think that she jumped into this race well before we were having the redistricting conversation in the state. Yeah. Though that is a concern amongst the number of candidates who are running for Congress right now, because the redistricting stuff is back in the news. People are worried the district's going to change radically. Is it going to happen? I don't think so. I agree with Collin. I don't think it's happening. But
I'd love it. Listen, I would love it if it did happen. Let's be real here. Democrats already overshot at their last map, and they've just been lucky based on how badly Republicans have performed that we haven't made them pay for it. If they go even further in another map, that would be a massive gift for Republicans. So I hope I'm wrong. Mike's been trying to jump in. Go ahead, Mike. You don't got to be nice on this podcast. Just interrupt people. Go for it.
Thank you. No, I was just, to Chris's point, I always ask when you hear the Manchurian candidate piece, and he kind of answered it, is what's in it for Robin Kelly? That would be the question I would have to ask for that, right? But I think, a couple people guessed on this podcast already as to why she may just be done and it's the last hurrah. But That's what I always wonder when that's being said. And I would only say about Julia Stratton is this, and same for Robin Kelly. I mean, the only thing you see, or at least in Chicago area, the only thing you see is Raja's stuff on TV, right? And so, where is she? I mean, what is she doing? I mean, I hear nothing from her. You actually hear more from Don Tracy than you actually hear from her. So, which is a surprise to me. Not a surprise to me as a Republican candidate, but just a surprise that a Republican's actually out there talking about being a senator. So, that was my only comment on that. And you kind of answered that with the Robin Kelly thing. So.
Yeah, I mean, if these candidates, these non-Raja Democratic candidates, don't get their act together soon, he's obviously going to run away with it. I think the thought process from them, especially from the Stratton team, was probably, hey, this race begins in January, because a lot of candidates do that. Oh, this race begins in January. That's not how politics works anymore. That may have been the case 20 years ago, but if you've been, living under a rock, or maybe you're just an old crusty consultant, sure, fine. That's how it used to work. But a lot of these campaigns will be won and lost by January 1st if you don't get your act together. And that is absolutely true about the Democratic primary and
Now,
for Senate.
I mean, this is your business, but I mean, I would be more of the Raj's message. I sit back and I look at it, and maybe it's again because we all know where my feelings lie on this is does the anti-Trump message sell still? I mean, that's all he is, right? I mean,
he's running in a Democratic primary, so of course that's going to be the whole message.
Yeah, but I guess, but is he thinking above and beyond that, or is it just about getting the nomination at this point?
It's an interesting question, and we'll obviously see that play out in the coming months.
Yep.
Let me take us to another federal race here, just because I don't want to spend the whole time on that one. Unless, are you guys good on the Senate race? We good there? All right, let me take us to the next one here on the federal races. The main potential race that could be in play. And again, we're mostly focused on a Republican perspective here. So Chris, the Democrat, wants to talk about the 9th district and the 7th district, and not districts anybody who's tuning into this podcast actually care about. Aisle 17 is the one that Republicans, if we're going to make a run at any district to pick up in Illinois, it's going to be aisle 17. You've got two candidates in that race. Dylan Vansel has been running for a bit. He raised $43K in this last quarter and has $54K on hand. Not amazing, but it's something you could build on. Julie Bickelhaupt has been pushed into the race. She's been recruited by some people to get into the race. And a lot of us were wondering how her fundraising would look. She's got a good number of wealthy contacts between her family and from the farm and being an elected official and some of her backers. So we're wondering how she'd do in her first quarter fundraising. She raised only $25K, and 5 of that was a loan. She's got 24 on hand. So as much as I want to sort of listen, I like Dylan, but that number's just not great. I want to tweak him for it. He's got over double of what Julie Bickelhaupt raised, and Bickelhaupt has all sorts of contacts where she should have raised way more than that. For context, Eric Sorensen has 800 plus K on hand. So we're going to need one of these two candidates to really pick it up here if we're going to have a chance at aisle 17. But I think people were wondering if Bickelhaupt was going to be the real deal in that race. So far, signs are that maybe she's not. Again, there's a little time left, but this Q3 report was not great.
I mean, you need to be seeing, 6 figures on those reports. I mean, it's it's the most competitive congressional seat in the state of Illinois, and probably top 30 if you go like nationwide. I mean, it's on the periphery, right? So you need to be bringing in a lot more than that if you're going to make this a real race.
Especially if you want the National Party and the NRCC to actually pay attention to you. If the NRCC sees that both candidates in the Republican primary are struggling, they can't even break $50,000 in Q3, then they're going to look at this and say, there's nothing we can do here. I mean, again, things we would have to see how things play out. But if you can't raise 100,000 or 200,000 your own, the NRCC usually just says you're not worth my time, especially in a tier 2, tier 3 district as far as national Republicans are concerned.
Well, and they've got the Young Guns program. You got to hit certain amounts to get into the Young Guns program, and I don't think that these amounts are going to qualify. So yeah, they've got some work to do. We hear a lot that Vansel has a huge grassroots army throughout the district. I mean, you see it in some of the photos. So that can obviously make up a little bit of this, but you're still going to have to raise more than what we see here. So encouragement here for our aisle 17 candidates to pump up the fundraising numbers.
And spend it wisely. I mean, that's the next thing, too. What are you spending it on?
Yeah, well, true. On the other congressional races, I'll just quickly rattle these off. These are the ones we listed as bench districts. They're not quite in focus just yet, but if a candidate really performs well, we could certainly start to talk about them more. IL6, you've got Nikki Conforti and Skylar Dunsing who are running. Neither of them raised very much. Nikki actually raised 85K, which is pretty decent, better than the IL-17 candidates. But to Collin's point, she's burning a lot. She burned through 68K of that. So I think she's got, I didn't make a note of it, it was around 20 or 30 that she had on hand. Skylar has only a few grand. Not great in IL-6. IL-8, Jennifer Davis has 556 on hand. She raised 58 and put in a $500,000 loan from herself. So obviously, we want to see the amount raised go up from that, but she just announced, and again, putting in $500,000 of her own money shows she's serious. So an eyebrow was raised on this IL8 number. We'll have to keep an eye on it. Mark Rice, the other Republican candidate in that race, raised $2,600 roughly, spent $1,600. He did have some in the bank, assuming that money is actually in the bank. So he has 188K on hand. So IL8 may warrant some more eyeballs here moving forward. Finally, IL14, same deal as IL6. Not a lot of fundraising. Martyr has 32K on hand. Underwood has 1.25 million. So not really going to work there. Any thoughts on those before we go to state races? All right, let's pop over to the state races. Let's talk about the Illinois governor's race. I know everyone's going to have thoughts about that one. So we've been talking about it the last few weeks. Darren Bailey, we wanted to see what his fundraising was going to be like. And his Q3 report showed 20 grand. That isn't going to cut it. Now, to be fair, I want to add this, that in A1s, since the report, there's another 50K that has been raised in A1s. So I want to make sure I am fair in this. That seems like since the report was filed, or since the end of the report, if you will, fundraising has been upped a bit, 50K over the course of about 2 weeks. That's much better than the 20K. Still not enough, but it is improvement. So I do want to be fair there. Meanwhile, the big contrast here is Ted Dabrowski, who raised $1.5 million. That included $250,000 from himself. He has just under $1.5 million on hand. In A1s, he's got the opposite story of Darren Bailey, only $1,500 in A1s since the beginning of October, which that calls into question what we said the last couple of weeks, which is, okay, was this all fundraising you queued up in the months before you announced? Because, you got to keep that building. You can't just fall off and stop fundraising. 1.5 million is great in this field of horrible fundraising candidates, but it's not enough to actually win this race. So some concerning signs from him on the other side, but he did beat Bailey significantly on fundraising. Jim Mendrick raised 35K, spent 75K, had 61K on hand, and since October 1st has only raised 1K. So continue to hope that Mendrick can reach his potential, but so far he has not. This is a two-person race between Bailey and Dabrowski. Any thoughts from you guys?
I wanted to give Ted Dabrowski a little bit of credit here because he only ended up spending, I think, was it 12K in the last quarter, which, we talk a lot about high burn rates. Mendrick's burn rate was extremely high based on the money he raised. So on the one hand, you have to give credit to Dabrowski. He didn't blow his $1 million the second he got it. At the same time, you have $1.5 million. Where's it going? It's nice to have $1.5 million in the bank. Don't get me wrong. We all on this podcast wish we had $1.5 million sitting in our campaign committees. But at the same time, having it just sit there when you're running for governor isn't the best. So I'm going to have Collin shoot me here when I say this, but it is still early, and I expect Ted Dabrowski to spend that money at some point. So on the one hand, I will give Ted credit for not blowing all of it day one. On the other hand, I'll give him crap because he didn't really spend any of it. So
but the reality is when you announce as late as you do in a quarter, most of the time you just wait till the first day of the following quarter to pay your bills. So yeah, there's no burn rate here, but let's wait till the next quarter to see which bills got pushed back and got paid on October 1st versus the third quarter. But to your point, again, we've talked about it. Dabrowski needs to raise his name ID and he needs to do it fast. This race could be over Jan 1 if they don't start raising their name recognition and building up support. So I think to your point, Chris, about having money in the bank, let's see what they do, how they deploy it in the coming weeks. Because if they don't start spending it and spending it wisely, this race of the Bailey campaign, despite having limited money, could end up lapping them in the field. So we'll see.
Yeah, I read the Mark Lennon article, which I guess Mark Lennon's entire existence these days is just to prop up Ted Dabrowski. But okay, great. Ted's got $1 million. Well, he probably is going to have to spend like 3 times that or 4 times that if Darren spends anything. So, and yeah, Chris said it's early, and I guess it's not late, but I don't think it's early. I think we're sort of just like, right. It's kind of like April, in the middle of the year, and we'll see how that plays out. But to me, it's different if Darren Bailey has $1.5 million and he's just sitting on it trying to build a war chest for the general. He doesn't need the name ID. Ted doesn't have that luxury. I mean, I was at a Lincoln dinner Saturday with Ted and Darren and Aaron and all these people. And I mean, look, Ted's a great guy. He's smart, but he gave the speech, and then Darren and Aaron spoke. And it's like, I think most of the room forgot who Ted was just because of he's really smart and really good numbers guy, but the charisma and the charm and stuff, he's working on it. But the other thing, back to finances real quick, his chairman's Jason Plummer, who has access to a ton of wealth. But we all know Plummer not historically a person that writes a lot of checks. And so I'm curious to see, does Jason Plummer as campaign chairman tap into his own family's wealth at some point to support Ted Dabrowski?
Well, and Collin, I think expectations need to come into play here. When we talk, for those of you who are watching this, if you're in the game, you get expectations, but maybe you don't. Let me quickly say this, that the expectation game is real, and that when we look at a candidate, we talked about aisle 17. You look at like a Dylan Vansel. This is not a guy with a hugely wealthy network. And so we'd love to see him raise more, but we kind of get it when he doesn't. Someone like Dabrowski, he's got a lot of the Paul Vallis donors behind him. He's got, Genie and Proft and their networks behind him. He's got the IPI people, and they raise millions every year behind him. He's got Plummer, who has family wealth, and he has access to donors and contributors. There's no reason why Dabrowski can't raise millions of dollars, not just the 1.5. Having Uline give money is an indicator to other donors that, hey, listen, I've got Uline with me, so now you write a check. There's a lot of potential here in this race. And so that's why we're pushing on the Dabrowski campaign, because he could, with the business community behind him, with everyone that's backing him, he could raise $2, $3, $4, $5 million, not the 1.5. And that's why I think we're a little bit harder on him than maybe some other candidate who doesn't have access to all that capital, where they just have to cold call all day. Dabrowski's got a long list of warm calls he could make to raise money. Now we want to see it.
From a money standpoint, you guys have way more experience than I do in this, from the statewide standpoint and all that. Mendrick doesn't surprise me. While Jim Mendrick's a popular household name in DuPage, beyond DuPage, it's tough. Dabrowski, I didn't hear you say, does Bailey have a lot of money in the bank or not a lot of money?
No, he's got 23,000 on hand. He's got nothing on hand. It's bad. I mean, I think we kind of glazed over that, and we're not done with the segment. But you want to run for governor. That was our big question: is can you guys raise money? Sure, 50 and A1 since the 1st of October. Okay, that's some progress, but 30 of that came from Gary Rabine. So you got 20 raised from other sources. This is not going to cut it, and this is what we needed to see out of Darren. We needed to see improved messaging and communications, which they've shown some of that, but also improved fundraising, and that we have not seen, and that's a problem.
I also think Rabine's good for more than 30. So starting off with 30.
Collin talked about people who have money but don't cut big checks. That's Gary Rabine to a T. So maybe he's not good for more than 30. Let's be real. I mean, but there are questions here, and again, we're talking about the goal here is somebody who can beat JB Pritzker. So we're gonna point out the facts. We're gonna have these discussions. Whoever wins this primary is our candidate, and we will be gung ho for them. But right now, we need one of these candidates or multiple to step up, because so far what we're seeing, this is not going to beat JB Pritzker for governor. This is not going to do it.
Maybe Darren LaHood will let go of some of his $6 million.
I mean, that's hard money that's raised on the federal rules. You don't dump that in a state race.
I'm just being funny.
That would be painful, man. Any other thoughts? This is kind of the only time we'll have to talk about the governor's race, and everyone usually likes talking about the governor's race. So let's take a quick detour. Anybody else have thoughts on the gov race? Collin talked about a Lincoln dinner, I think it was, that we saw these candidates at. Anybody else have any thoughts on the race itself?
I mean, I just think it's just disappointing all around, the overall numbers. Everybody needs to be raising more. I mean, I think that Darren comes into this with a lot of name ID, so he has that kind of built in already, which is going to be very beneficial to him. But, money, like you were alluding to earlier, money follows money. Like, you got to get some of those checks in the door, and then people say, oh, well, my buddy over here donated, or we usually donate to the same people, I'm going to write a check too. You have to use those checks to leverage other checks. And that's not really happening for anybody. I mean, everybody's just kind of raising what they're raising, and that's it. So Ted's going to need a lot more if he's going to get his name ID up. Darren, I think there's a lot of people that are kind of looking around for alternatives. And if Darren were to put up some strong fundraising numbers, I think maybe they would second guess that and say, well, he's putting up good numbers. Maybe I'll support him again. Everybody's got to prove themselves. That's what we're going through right now. Prove yourself.
And Michael, isn't that that's the challenge to the Bailey campaign? Listen, we know you've got name recognition. We know you've got a network around the state. Hunker down. Just hunker down and raise money, because you could lock this race up by January. If you go out there and you raise $1 million in Q4, you could basically lock this race down, because then you end all those questions about, is this guy for real? Can Darren Bailey 3.0 or whatever version it is? Can this be the version that actually gives JB Pritzker a run for his money? Like, that's how you end this race in Q4. So there's the challenge to Darren and the team.
So my last point on this isn't directly related to the governor's race, but it kind of is at the same time. To see what I mean, I'm already hearing from people in the game, secondarily related to the game, something like that, that why do you have to worry about fundraising? Isn't Trump just going to come save you? He wants to take on JB Pritzker because of everything that's in the news. Okay. We've got the National Guard coming in. We've got Trump and Pritzker duking it out on television. Trump says JB Pritzker should go to jail. Pritzker says, you can come take me, Trump. I think there is an expectation, which is grounded in some type of logic, which I will grant, that Trump hates JB Pritzker enough to where he's going to come save the Illinois Republican Party with large checks. That's not happening. I understand that you see that people watch the news and they see, Trump and Pritzker going back and forth, and like, okay, obviously Trump's going to invest in this state. No, that's not how this works. If you want any time, and this is advice to all candidates, if you want investment from outside sources, you actually have to show some level of competence, not only when it comes to fundraising, but in terms of campaign infrastructure in general. So don't be over-reliant on this idea that, well, certainly somebody's going to come to save, because nobody's going to come to save. I can promise you that.
Yeah. A couple quick thoughts on my end. I'm going to start with one that's just a joke. It's kind of fun, though. This camp seems to, get frustrated anytime I talk about their race, but whatever. But Ted Dabrowski. So I had this thought this last week, just because I was chuckling, because every time I see him on Twitter, it's another graph. I was like, he may not be governor of Illinois, but he is definitely governor of graphs. And then, so as I was producing the agenda for this week today, I just decided, hey, just before I say that, I want to be sure he hasn't changed and now I look like an idiot. So I pop on his Twitter feed, and he's got a graph up with the fundraising numbers comparing him to the other two candidates. It's like, okay, well, this is perfect. He clearly is the governor of graphs. I know he wants to be governor of Illinois, but at least he's governor of something already. So having some fun there with Ted, but they are definitely king of graphs over there.
The graph god.
What's that?
The graph god.
There you go. And then I just, because I had this sent to me, I'll have to look, but at least 7 times this was sent to me. The press release from the Dabrowski campaign after the Israeli hostages were released, which that's amazing. And obviously progress towards peace in the Middle East is a good thing no matter who makes it happen. Democrats. But the press release that the Dabrowski campaign put out was like, Trump is amazing. Trump did this. Trump is incredible. Every paragraph. It's the eighth paragraph before they ever actually mentioned JB Pritzker, the guy they're running against. I had so many people send this to me going, what is going on here? I understand you're running in a primary, but this is the strategy here. If the strategy is to just be all Trump all the time in the primary, maybe that kind of helps you in the primary, but it's certainly not going to help you in a general election. A lot of head scratching going on about what was the point of the release. And does this mean that the Dabrowski campaign is just going to keep running further and further right to win this primary? That's a scary thought for a lot of people, because he already started out more conservative than I think most of us thought that he was. So just something that we noticed that a lot of people sent to me that we're going to be keeping an eye on in the coming weeks. All right, let's get off that race. Let's go to legislative races. We'll do this quick because we've already spent a half hour on this topic. But when it comes to legislative fundraising, the focus is really on the leaders, because individual candidates don't tend to raise that much. So we'll go through some of the races here. So you look at the leader fundraising. Chris Welsh, Speaker of the House, has the most money, or brought in the most money. He raised 2.7 million. Don Harmon brought in 2.2. John Curran brought in a little over $500,000, and McCombie brought in a little under $500,000. Compared to how Republicans have raised in the past, those numbers aren't bad from the Republican leaders. But you look at what Democrats have access to on their side, between all the different committees, Welsh's numbers, it's well over 6 million, I believe. Harmon has 16.5 million, whereas on the Republican side, you've got what is this? On the Senate side, we've got 200K in the bank. On the House side, we've got a little over 200K in the bank. I'm sorry, I did that wrong. Senate side has 2.5 million in the bank. There we go. And on the House side, if you combine committees, it looks like more like $1 million in the bank. So again, for Republicans, not bad, but you see the huge money disparity between Democrats and Republicans. It has always been thus, but we still have to give that information. Facts are facts. So we're sharing that with our audience. Any races that stood out to you guys? I've got a list here because I actually did my homework, Chris and Michael. But any races standing out to you guys on the legislative side? I'm going to put you on the spot since you didn't help me at all doing my research.
What's the fundraising look like in the Liz Bishop, Amy Reel, Crystal Lochran?
Yeah, so 76 is one of our best potential pickup opportunities in the House. Amy Briel has 73 on hand. Liz Bishop has 17K on hand. And then Crystal Lochran, Lochran, I don't know how to say it properly, is running again. She has $500. So still looks like Liz Bishop is the odds-on favorite there in that primary, though some people are trying to change that. But she's got 17K in the bank for Liz Bishop, so we're going to need to up that to have a good chance in that race.
One of the ones that I looked at was Zach Meyer versus Charlie Meyer, because, I mean, I guess that district's just destined to be represented by a Meyer, apparently. But Charlie had $110,000 cash on hand. Zach Meyer had $20,000, $10,000 of which was a loan that he had given himself to start that campaign. But Zach Meyer's report was strange because there was the loan of 10, the total of 20, but there wasn't any reporting of where that additional $10,000 came from. So we may have to look for an amended report in the future.
Unless they started with that. Like if you file with 10, then you don't have to then say where that came from. But
sure.
Interesting thought. I can go through some of these races. Obviously, on the Senate side, there's a lot of holds. There's 4 seats we've got to hold on to there. And of course, we want to do more than that. But 24, 26, 33, 41. Seth Lewis has 158K on hand. His opponent, Ben McAdams, just filed his D1, so nothing on that side. 26, you've got Darby Hills with 410K on hand. Nabila Saeed, her Democratic opponent, has 105K. So that looks good at the member level. But again, remember, it's the caucuses that come in with the millions that change this completely. But kudos so far to Seth and Darby for putting up some good numbers. In the Don DeWitt district, you've got 4 Republicans running. Jessica Brueggelmans is the choice of the Senate, and some of their members have already put some cash her way. She's got 20K on hand. Danielle Penman has about 6.5 on hand. Tom McIntosh has $100, and Cody Holt has not filed a committee that I could find. Democrat in that district is Michelle Clark. She's got 13.8 on hand. So you can see how that's playing out. Still a lot we're going to learn here on how 33 is going to play out. John Curran's the candidate in 41. He obviously has the leader money, so he's got plenty of cash on that side. We're waiting to see if he's going to get an opponent, so no word there on what his opponent's fundraising might look like. I'll finish the Senate and then open it up if you guys have thoughts on the Senate. The 2 pickups that we're looking at, 48, Doris Turner. Frank Lesko is the candidate. He's got 5.5 on hand. This is Lesko's thing. He doesn't raise a ton typically. He just finds ways to win. So obviously we'd love to see that number go up, but it's Frank Lesko. So he's one of those candidates that you don't necessarily look only at fundraising. However, Doris Turner has $750,000 on hand. So fundraising is going to be a thing in that district if we're going to play in it. In 36, against Mike Halpin, a district that may potentially be in play, you've got 2 Republicans running. Patrick Harlan has 6K on hand. Brad Beekman has 2.5K on hand. Harlan's been in the race longer, but whatever. I mean, 6 versus 2.5. Neither of these candidates has really raised anything. So we're going to be looking for both of these guys to up their game if they're going to try to take on Mike Halpin, who has about 380 on hand. So the message for a lot of these candidates is let's go. Let's up our games. We need to do better than this.
Marty, and I know this is a House seat, but Marty's got like 186,000 on hand, looks like. So I mean, that's not a terrible number. I mean,
I see 87, but I might have missed one there. I could be wrong.
he's got 2 committees.
Got it. So then I must have missed the other one. Okay.
Yeah. So one's got like 86 and one's got 100 or something like that. He's got a friends of, and then so Marty's got 186 grand. I mean, he needs more. Obviously, it take more than that. But at this point in the race, that's not a bad number to be at.
Yeah, I mean, Maria Peterson is 103. I'll do my house campaign since you pulled up the house, so I'll just rattle these off real quick too. You mentioned Marty, the number he has. Thanks for updating that because I only had the 87. Maria Peterson has 103 on hand, so that's definitely going to be a hot race. 47 is going to be probably the biggest race because Amy Grant's retirement makes that an open seat. The Republican candidate is Robert Vrankovich. He just filed, so no news there. The Democrat that's running is Erica Bray Parker. She's got about 36 and a half on hand. Another big hold for us is 104. Brandon Schweizer has 27 on hand. And the Democrat there is Mary Catherine Robertson. The other Democrat has gotten out and endorsed her. So it looks like she's going to be the candidate. She's definitely not a Jarrett Clem. She is much more to the left, which is certainly going to help improve our odds in 104. She hasn't filed yet, so nothing on her end yet. We obviously want to hold on to 114. Kevin Schmidt's got 31K on hand. We don't know who the Democrat's going to be, right, Michael? Latoya Greenwood has 81. I know George McClellan has filed. He hasn't filed his committee, though he has announced he's running, so we don't know who would be the candidate, but those are the numbers there, at least, for those guys.
The only thing we're hearing on the Democratic side is George McClellan. That's the name that keeps popping up. He did create a Facebook page, so that's kind of what we're anticipating.
Okay. It hasn't filed the committee yet, so no fundraising to speak of. House District 66, we've talked about it a little bit, that Republicans were hoping for an improvement either out of Lori Parman or maybe out of a new candidate. We'll have to wait and see who files there, but Lori Parman has only $50 in the bank. That's probably why, to those who are complaining that, hey, people are looking for a different candidate in 66. Well, maybe that's why. 66 is one of our best pickup opportunities. $50 when you ran last time is just abysmal. Suzanne Ness has 38K on hand. Not great, but she's the incumbent. Republicans are going to need to do way better if we're going to make 66 a race. Gabby Shanahan's running again in 97. She's got 47K on hand. Harry Benton has 279,000 on hand. So Gabby, that 47 number is good, but obviously she'll do her thing and keep pumping that up higher. And then 112, Katie Stewart's got just under 200K on hand. Jimmy Ford just filed, so we don't know much on his end just yet, but Katie Stewart starts out with a solid advantage on the fundraising side. All right, so that's all the ledge districts. Anything stand out to you guys?
Well,
Go ahead, Butler.
No, I was going to say, I mean, obviously the strategy on a lot of these, House races from the Republican side is, establish your committee after the filing deadline because you don't want to have an embarrassing, report, which I think is a smart play. And we're just going to have to keep an eye on it and see what they raise, moving forward.
Yeah, that is a good strategy, assuming you raise money in Q4, which is, by the way, the hardest quarter to raise money in. So it becomes a bad strategy if after Q4 you announce that you raised $3,500. So yes, strategically I get it, but you got to get out there and fundraise. To all these Republicans, you got to get off your butts and fundraise. It's the hardest thing to do in politics. I get it. We teach a whole day-long class on it because it's difficult and it's frustrating, but it's the only way you're going to have a chance to win, especially in a state like Illinois where we're at a tremendous financial disadvantage. And so far, only a few of these Republicans have done a good job on fundraising. They deserve praise. We need to see way more step up their games.
Right. And that was kind of going to be my point, is that what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to file, and you're going to have your kickoff fundraiser. Your kickoff fundraiser is supposed to raise you. That's when you start making your calls. Hey, can you do this? Can you sponsor? It doesn't seem like a lot of these candidates are really putting into work for fundraising right now. And that's why my key piece of advice to every candidate watching this is to never expect somebody's coming to save you, because it's always been a problem with the caucuses. Like, oh, I'm in a high tier 3 or low tier 2 district. The leader is just going to give me some money. No, they're not. Let me be honest with you. The leader will give you money if they see you. Wow, this guy in this, D+4 district, they raised 150K on their own. This is somebody we want to support. You have to make your leadership and the people in charge of you, for lack of a better term, you have to make them respect you and make you like you. So don't go out there assuming that the checks are just going to start coming in. No. Pick up the phone. If you're running for office, you should have so many connections of people that you can call and say, listen, can I count on you for $500? Can I count on you for $250? Can I count on you for a double max? Like, that's what you should be thinking when you're running for office. Never expect things to be handed to you. If we don't expect things to be handed to us in life, that's kind of the conservative mentality that we're going to lace up our bootstraps and we're going to put in the work that the Democrats don't. So actually put your money where your mouth is and pick up the phone and start dialing.
Yeah, Len, let's close this topic. Actually, Collin, go ahead, and then I'll close this out.
I just want to give a quick shout out to Joe DeBose. I know that's a seat that we're going to hold red, but Joe.
I didn't look that one up. Yeah, what do you got there?
He's got like 31 on hand, and he's raised more since October 1st. I mean, he's getting out and like doing what Chris has said, right? I mean, establishing his connections and raising some money, and I know he'll be helpful to holding keeping downstate dark red.
I mean, he raised money that raised more than Darren Bailey did for governor. So I don't know who that speaks more of, but I'll close on this. I want to echo what Chris said. Yeah, we give these caucuses some grief on these podcasts, and I believe it's mostly earned. But I got to tell you, the number of candidates that I speak to in Illinois who just think, hey, listen, it's the leadership's job to raise money for me. It's naive at best and frustrating, frankly. John Curran is not going to come in and save your butt if you don't get off your rear end and raise money and go work. Tony McCombie is not going to come in and save your butt if you don't go out there and raise money and put the work in. You got to stop assuming that these guys are going to come in and save you because they don't have the money. We just talked about it. The fundraising disparity between Democrats and Republicans at the leadership level. They do not have the money to play in more than a few races in each caucus. That means you, candidate, that's probably not you. Get out there, go raise some money, put in the work. If you want to win, you got to actually put in the work. Otherwise, get the heck out of the way for somebody else who will do the work, because I'm sick and tired of watching these lazy candidates put up horrible numbers and then just expect the rest of us to come in and save your butts. All right, let's get off this topic. Let's talk about veto session. We don't have to spend a lot of time in this because basically very little happened other than politics was played. Collin, I know you spent some time down there. You just got back just before our recording. So since you were on the ground, why don't you give us your thoughts on what did or didn't happen for the first week of veto session?
Well, what did happen is the Democrats gave us tons of opportunities to talk about why they don't care about the issues voters care about. They didn't do anything to lower the cost of energy. They did nothing to lower the cost of living. They did nothing to lower property taxes. Nothing. All they did was sit on the House floor and the Senate floor and cry and scream about Donald Trump. That's it. We expected energy reform. We expected anti-ICE bills. Of course, we expected something to be said about ethics. I mean, for God's sake, their 40-year speaker went to prison Monday. And we literally passed like 5 resolutions about how much they hate Donald Trump, and voted on one veto the whole week. It was a complete and utter joke. Props to the House Republicans. They did do a good job organizing some great floor comments against the resolutions, just sort of calling out the hypocrisy and the bull. The Freedom Caucus jumped in on all of those as well. But yeah, just a big old nothing but we hate Trump fest. That's all it was.
Yeah, I mean, it did create an opening for Republicans to talk about how little Democrats care about helping working families in the state. It's all about politics. I did have several people mention to me that clearly the Democrats' goal here was politics, because now I'm going to give the other side of the coin for what you just said, Moseley, which is now Democrats can say, because some of these resolutions that they passed were against political violence. Now, if you look at it, it was horribly written. It was very much anti-Trump. Of course, no Republican could vote for that, but that was the goal. That was the aim. And now next year in these 2026 campaigns, Democrats are going to be able to say that Republicans voted unanimously against condemning political violence. They're going to use that against us. And so from the Democratic perspective, I believe they probably feel like they accomplished what they wanted to this week politically. Now, if your goal is to govern and actually make things better for the people of Illinois, it was an abject failure by Democrats. But if you're like Chris and it's all politics all the time, there were some wins for Democrats here that I think are going to hurt Republicans a bit in the general election.
There were several who skipped votes. Sorry, I just want to say this real quick. There were several Republicans that skipped the votes. San Eligio, Laha. I mean, yeah. I know why.
I liked that Republicans were doing what you said and fighting back during comment. I think a unanimous no vote or a unanimous abstention, or like they did earlier this year where they just walk out. I think there were ways to not all vote no while also making your point. So I think, again, just we always want to give the analysis here for people. You're going to see this in TV ads next fall. So just be aware of it. I'm sure Republicans down there made the calculation and said they're fine with that. But just be aware this is Democrats got what they wanted this week. Whether that's a good thing or not, we're going to find out during the election.
Well, and I think as, operatives, as people that are supporting Republican candidates across the state, we have to be prepared to answer those questions when they come up because that this is going to be in ads and mailboxes, etc. And people are going to be asking you about it or, bring this up in conversation probably. So be prepared for that. But I think, we kind of saw probably about a week and a half ago, there was kind of a very public rift between McCombie and Pritzker, where Pritzker accused McCombie of, refusing to condemn political violence and things like that. And, now it's in resolution form as well. So that's definitely an angle that they're going to be taking.
Yeah. As Collin said, some of the things that didn't happen, you've got energy reform. By the way, for those who don't know, veto session is split by a week. So next week they're off, and the week after that they go back. That's the final week of veto session, and that's it, other than if they call a special session. So if things are going to happen, it's likely going to be not next week, but the week after. We'll keep you informed. Interestingly enough, we keep hearing the energy bill is still being figured out, but then the Illinois Environmental Council came out with a press release and said this guy McFadden, looking at this piece here, this guy McFadden, female lady, Katie McFadden, said the bill is ready to go. We were able to take the summer and make sure all stakeholders in alignment. Now all that's left is to vote. So clearly they actually do have the full bill that they want to run. They just haven't put it up on the board yet. So I thought that was interesting. Transit is still being figured out. Welsh has been polling his members to figure out which tax hikes on working families they could stomach over others. So there will be tax hikes coming for transit. Something is going to be done here. Obviously, everyone's watching that very, very closely. As Collin mentioned, there's several bills on immigration that are being pushed forward, some performative, some maybe substantive. I know that a number of business leaders came out with an op-ed in the Tribune just this week talking about how lawmakers should reject sweeteners to pension benefits. I hadn't heard this brought up, so maybe it's just them putting a shot across the bow so that this doesn't come up during veto. But the numbers here are definitely scary. Obviously, we've talked about it a lot on this podcast over the last year plus, that there's this talk about how tier 2 needs to be fixed, and yet the fixed numbers about this, what they actually want to pass is this gigantic pension sweetener because they're seeing their opportunity here, and it would be a huge step backward for the state of Illinois' fiscal health. So definitely something there worth watching. And then obviously Cam Buckner and his fight to keep the Bears from leaving Chicago, he's filed his bill for that. So certainly some things could happen in a week and a half when veto session kicks back up again. We'll keep an eye on it. Chris, thought?
Yeah, my thought, I'm going with a lot of life lessons today and kind of using that to talk politics and government. Usually in life, you eat your green beans and eat your vegetables first. And once you're done with your vegetables, you can finally get to the dessert. What seems to be the Democrats' MO in Springfield is that they always go with dessert first. We gotta go with the anti-Trump stuff. We gotta go with the political stuff. We do that week one, and then we kind of sit on our hands and we're not really working. We're kind of just like, oh yeah, we got something in the works on transit. We're going to raise your taxes, but it might not be as much as the Senate wants to. That's the House talking, So you play the political games week one, and then you get to have your vegetables week two. But by that point, the vegetables might be spoiled. That's the analogy I'm going with. I'm pessimistic about how capable they're going to be to get through some of these key bills that they want to pass, energy and transit, and there's some stuff with the healthcare industry and immigration. I'm skeptical because I believe, and it seems to be the case, that there is a loud voice yelling in their ear that you need to keep eating dessert, keep eating chocolate, keep eating candy. Yes, you want to remap the state again. That's what the National Democrats want to do. Wouldn't that be so nice for you in Illinois? How much political capital do you get? So that's what I think is very concerning right now, because in a competent government, Chris Collins says I'm on politics all the time. Let's talk competent government here for a second. In a competent government, you would eat your vegetables first, and then you can get to the fun, Trump sucks bills. You can get to those week two. We're going to do Trump sucks week one and try and get to the spoiled vegetables week two.
Yeah, I mean, humans don't really work that way. But listen, I'm not going to promise this to our audience, but Tulane, if AI can spit out an image of Chris as Willy Wonka as he talks about eating dessert, I think that could be a lot of fun for our audience. So just a suggestion. I don't know.
I don't consent to that. That would be a lawsuit if you make an AI image of me as Willy Wonka. I don't consent to that.
Yeah, well, we'll see. We'll get Chris's consent and we'll put that on screen, and
You'll
we'll
be
have some
hearing
fun.
from my attorneys.
Yeah, I
Well,
think
I
your attorneys
think, you
are
know,
my attorneys, but whatever. Anyways, let's go to our next topic. So one thing that is apparently going to be happening that you need to be aware of as our audience is you're hearing this term decoupling a lot. There is a budget deficit right now in Illinois. Shocker. We all warned you about this, that they passed a budget that was overspending, claiming it was balanced. And then now they're coming back and saying, oh, it's all Washington's fault. It's all Trump's fault that now we're 260 million in a deficit. It's not. It's a lie. Go back and watch. Republicans, this podcast, we've been saying it ever since May that this budget overspent and they're going to try to blame it on Washington when it finally comes to light. Well, here we are. What we predicted is happening. They're blaming it on Washington. But what you need to know is not necessarily the budget hole, because we warned you about that. It's actually what Pritzker and the Democrats want to do to fill that hole. It's called decoupling. Here's the deal. Washington, Trump, Republicans out in D.C. with no help from Democrats made permanent a number of tax cuts for working families, for small businesses. They passed a bunch of incentives for working families, for manufacturers. All of that was in the big, beautiful bill, or the Working Families Tax Cut Act, or whatever we're calling it now. All of that was passed. And now the state of Illinois is like, wait a second. That's going to lower taxes for people in Illinois. We don't like that. So we want to claw some of that back. And so that's what that word decoupling means. They want to decouple from the federal government so that you don't actually get those tax cuts and those benefits that you've been promised by the federal government. This is going to hurt, depending on where they want to decouple, this is going to hurt working families. So far, the group we know that's getting screwed the most is manufacturers. I'd love to see IMA step up and talk about this, though they're so far in Pritzker's pocket. We'll see if they actually do it. But kudos to the Technology and Manufacturing Association. They have come out strong on this and said it's not the responsibility of small family-run manufacturers to pay more to fund the state's perpetual overspending, because there are measures that DC have passed to help made in America, made in Illinois manufacturers, and those are basically, this decoupling will take a lot of that away. So here you go, you've got Pritzker and Democrats saying tariffs are hurting our manufacturers, so Trump and Republicans do something to help manufacturers, and now those same people are like, oh no, we don't like that, we're going to claw that back, we want that money instead. I mean, this is Pritzker and the Democrats. I want to see, we talk about AI generated images. I want to see a picture of like Washington and Republicans and Trump saying, here you go, here's tax cuts for working families. And then there's Pritzker as the Grinch going, gimme, 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 I want it. Because that's basically what's happening here.
Yeah, so can that be effectively messaged in November, right? I mean, and here again, it's like, can we use it to our advantage? I think that's the question. If they actually do it, which knowing them, they will actually do it. So can we message that in November? Can it be used on top of everything else? I hope so. And I also, are they going to try to do that to capture revenue to make up for what then they don't have to raise taxes as much? I mean, there's always a game there, but can we use it to our advantage, right?
Well, and let me be clear, my explanation was for our audience, so you know what's going on here. The line is simple. The line is this. You've got to simplify it, otherwise the public will not understand it. Here's the simple line. Republicans in Washington delivered tax relief for working families and support for American manufacturers, yet before Illinoisans could even benefit, the Scourges in Springfield are trying to take that money for themselves. That's it. It's that simple. That's what's going on here. And we got to make that clear to the public, because that's essentially how Pritzker wants to fill this budget hole that he created, even though he's blaming it on Republicans. And I'm sure there will be more. So you need to be watching this whole decoupling thing, and you need to be talking about it. Don't let them try to sneak this through, because it's complicated. You got to simplify it, and you got to hammer it home. All right, let's go on to our next topic. Immigration. Let's do this fast because we've talked a lot about immigration in our last few episodes, but it's still a thing. We got to talk about it. Violence has continued to increase. We see, obviously, this made the news everywhere. A WDN producer said she was attacked and abducted and arrested by ICE, and she did nothing. Well, it turns out there's video out there that she actually threw something at a patrol car, but we skip past that because it's okay to attack ICE. It's just not okay for them to hold us accountable for it. On Saturday in Broadview, 15 people were arrested by Illinois State Police and the Cook County Sheriff's Police. You even had the Broadview mayor admit it. saying that protests degenerated into chaos. That's not what you're hearing out of Pritzker. You're hearing they're mostly peaceful. I remember those words from the Black Lives Matter riots, and we're back there again. You had a Democrat running for the state Senate, Patrick Hanley, who basically doxed ICE agents and said which hotel they were staying at and encouraged people to go cause them problems. On the city's southeast side, there was a situation where undocumented immigrants rammed a border patrol SUV, and then a crowd gathered, and there was a tense standoff. And then Chicago police officers got exposed to tear gas during the standoff, and a 15-year-old looks like they may have been detained. This violence is continuing to escalate, and we've been talking about it. Like, where does this go? It goes nowhere good. And of course, the rhetoric by the left continues to escalate along with it, probably not accidentally. You had J.B. Pritzker yet again going out there multiple times comparing the federal law enforcement to the Gestapo and Nazis and Hitlerism and everything else. He said they're creating mayhem. They're the ones who are tossing tear gas when people are peacefully protesting. That's his line. And he's saying now that if a Democrat takes the White House in 2028, they're going to prosecute all these ICE agents. I mean, it's just they continue to ratchet up the rhetoric over and over and over again. Meanwhile, the Broadview protests are getting a little weird. I don't know if you guys saw this, but they've started wearing inflatable costumes, some of the protesters. There was Cookie Monster, a penguin, a cow, Winnie the Pooh. There's a bumblebee. I think they said they're doing it for attention and trying to make it look like how peaceful they are. They're just wearing costumes. It's no big deal while they throw stuff at the police officers. Anyways, this is the latest. Your thoughts on immigration? Let's do this one quick, though.
My thoughts on it are this. There were reports that, from political side, that the minority community, the Black community in the city of Chicago, found the stance of the mayor and the governor wildly unpopular, right? They were, because, more attention is being paid to them than to us, kind of thing. You don't hear that anymore. Where's that conversation in today's world? Did they somehow or another buy them off one way or another, and I wasn't aware of it? That's one of the things I'm most curious about during this immigration debate.
Well, you have some adults in the room. I'm going to give this guy credit, Don Tracy, and I know he's our client. Let me be clear, but this was his idea, not mine, to talk about adults in the room. We need to sit down, like stop this. Everybody sit down, because as you're talking about, Mike, these minority communities want more help. All right, they're not necessarily convinced what that help looks like, and they're wary about troops. Let's just be honest about that. But the reality is they want help. They want safe communities, and they want these politicians to just be adults and sit down and somehow find a way to make their communities safe. And that's been Don's point. I give him credit for that. And there's several other politicians out there who are sticking to that. That there are mistakes. Let's be real. There are mistakes being made by both sides of this. And the reality is, if we could just be adults here and say, let's keep communities safe. Let's keep families safe. That's what our leaders ought to be doing. But instead, you've got both sides just keep ratcheting it up further and further and further. And this is going nowhere good, because real people are being hurt along the way. And so I give credit to those elected officials, those public servants who are saying, you know what, instead of you guys being politicians just looking for likes, or Pritzker looking to run for president, how about we just sit down and be adults and actually be leaders for once? I'd love to be able to see that one time in my life.
I know when this was being debated this past week in veto session on the immigration issue, just at some point, what more can you say, right? It's all been, we've said it over and over and over again. This has been battered around. So Adam Niemer got up and basically just read off 10 or 12 names of the people that have been arrested and what they were arrested for. And it's MS-13 gang members and rapists. And so to me, that was a worthy message. He's like, you know what, guys, I'm not going to yell at you about how wrong you are about this. I'm just going to tell you who's being arrested, and you decide whether or not that's worthy of burning down Chicago over.
And Collin, I think the deal here, sorry, I've got a bee coming after me. I think the deal here is that Republicans don't seem to understand that we're in a massive PR fight on this issue. Democrats get it, and they are beating us on this. They are beating us on the PR aspects of what's going on in Chicago. And the winning strategy here is, we talked about it last week, focus on crime. But Collin, your point, I said this last week and the week before, which is you need to make this real for people. Point to the people who are being arrested, the ones that are being taken off the streets. That's where we can win on this issue. But the more that we let the narrative be that a 15-year-old kid was arrested and detained, that kids were woken up in the middle of the night. I mean, this is not going to win us this issue in the hearts and minds, and that is where this battle is being fought. Democrats get it, and I don't think Republicans are understanding this right now. Cheering, troops and the National Guard on the ground, which by the way isn't happening right now because a judge put a hold on that. But cheering that on, fine, it makes you feel good. But the reality is, right now, this fight isn't that. This fight is in the hearts and minds of voters, and Democrats are beating us in that fight, and we've got to get on the battlefield because this is going to hurt next November if we don't.
We're losing this fight because it's not any longer a public safety. Now it's human rights. The Democrats have successfully made this a human rights PR campaign, not a public safety campaign.
Yep. Right. We gotta reclaim that narrative, and we gotta do it fast.
I think Moseley's 100% right on this, because what hit me this week was the ICE officers who were surrounding St. Teresa's Church in the city of Chicago. And the Democrats got a great PR boost, is that while these people are at mass, ICE is surrounding the premises, and the priest is basically saying, hey, if you got to leave mass to get out of here and avoid ICE, get out of here. That's stuff that shouldn't be happening, period. And it pulls my heartstrings. And once you're pulling my heartstrings, you're losing the narrative to begin with.
When your heart is that big, talk about the Grinch. Yeah.
I mean, I'm a Democrat, so maybe it's a little bit easier than you might think, Collin. But in any case, that's the stuff. And honestly, this is the fault of ICE, too, because ICE is at some point also got better at how they're doing their job as well. And you can shoot me for saying that. I don't care.
No, listen, it's true. We've given this caution to the public that, yes, something needs to be done about crime in Chicago. And yes, there are many, many, many mistakes being done by the left. And we have pointed them out. Go watch last week's episode. I fought Cadaley on this. I've done it for weeks. We are pointing out all mistakes by the left and how they're ratcheting up the rhetoric. But the reality is our side needs to be aware here. I feel like some people have gotten the wrong message from this podcast. Just because I'm only giving half the equation because this is a Republican podcast doesn't mean the other half doesn't exist. And the other half right now is we are losing this PR battle, and that's going to hurt. It's going to hurt bad. I mean, I don't understand why ICE isn't doing a better job, and their PR department at the Department of Homeland Security isn't doing a better job fighting back. I don't know why they don't want cameras, because the reality is when the left instigates this, don't you want proof of that instead of these things being tossed out in court every time because there's no proof? Wouldn't you want proof of it? Most of the police officers that I know, and again, we're just talking local law enforcement, support the body cams that they wear because it protects them and it shows that they are doing things the right way. This fighting against it and cutting funding for it out of DC, I feel like we're going to regret that, because every time a protester does something that incites, that basically requires federal law enforcement to respond. If you attack them, they are required to respond because that's their job, is to enforce the law. And they hold up a camera and go, look, they're attacking me. It's well, no, you instigated it, but there's no proof of the instigation. We need to do a better job capturing this, because otherwise this narrative is going to keep going away from us. All right, let's move on. I said fast, so let's make that fast. I was shocked this week when the news came out that a hearing officer actually upheld a nearly $10 million fine for Don Harmon, because I've been convinced that he was going to skate on this. Now, to be clear, it's just the hearing officer's recommendation. The State Board of Elections will rule on this on October 21st, so next week. So let's see what they do. Maybe he'll still end up being right, and they'll give Harmon a slap on the wrist, or they'll just give him a complete a walk away on this. But the fact that the hearing officer agreed that he should have to be held responsible for breaking election law, I'm genuinely shocked, because usually if Republicans break election law by mistake, we get a fine and we got to pay the bill. When Democrats do it on purpose, somehow they find a way to skate. This is obviously a record-setting fine, and it looks like there's at least a chance here that Harmon might actually have to cut a check for this, which would be justice. It's deserved. They blatantly broke the law on this. So I don't know. I'm interested to see how this plays out, but there's a step here towards maybe actually some justice here, and some, Collin Moseley talked about, no ethics reform down in Springfield. Maybe there's somebody out there who actually cares about ethics in Illinois.
It's not looking good for the Chris Vindicated crowd, because one of my long-standing positions on this podcast is you can do whatever you want and get away with it for the Democrats. If somebody actually faces the consequences of their actions for political maneuvering in the state of Illinois, what is my whole career? my whole career has been for nothing. If that's the case, if there are actual consequences for the Democrats' actions, what are we doing here, folks? Is there actual rule of law when it comes to elections in the state of Illinois? To be determined. We have a week to find out. It may come down to Don Harmon will only have to pay $10 to the State Board of Elections and say, I'm sorry, and now everything will be fine. But for now, it's not looking good for my school of thought.
Well, and that'll be a big hit to the Democratic Senate caucus if they have to write that check. And,
that would almost bring the Democrats and Republicans to parity when it comes to cash on hand. Now, Dems can fill that fast, let's be real, but this could be a shot in the arm for Republicans, that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
I agree with that. And also, I mean, whether it's 10, look, I'll be surprised if the actual review board doesn't say, hey, look, we agree with the hearing officer, but this is too steep.
Yeah, 10%, like you're not 980K, that's my guess.
Yeah, that's my guess too. And now still, I think there's still a message there that, look, Democrats had to pay a nearly $1 million fine because they can't follow the rules. There's still a message there. But yeah, I mean, $1 million to them is nothing, but I think it's more about the principle that, wow, we actually have seen a state board upheld a ruling against a Democrat. That's kind of unprecedented. But we'll see if it happens. We'll see if it happens.
And I want to see, I mean, the Republicans did this with Madigan all the time. Like, anytime Madigan was in the news, hold every person accountable who took Madigan money. Like, anybody who the Senate Democrats and Harmon have given money to in one of these competitive races, I want to see pushes, press releases, text messages, digital ads. Doris Turner has taken however much from the Senate Democratic leader who was just caught and fined $1 million for election fraud and election law, skirting the election laws. Like, you got to punch up that language, obviously, but I want to see this used to our advantage the moment that this comes out, because that's the kind of guerrilla tactics we got to be doing if we want to win elections in this state. Great. All right, let's go to, here we go. Let's talk national stuff. Again, we'll do it fast, but we got to talk about this. The Democrats shutdown. There's a reason why I want to bring this up. It continues. We're in week 3 of the shutdown, and there's this battle in D.C. about who's going to be held responsible for this. It looks like voters are more likely to hold Democrats accountable for this than they were the last time there was a shutdown, though it still is. It's a bit even in terms of who they hold accountable. I think it's like Trump and then congressional Democrats and then congressional Republicans, but usually it's just all Republicans that the public holds accountable. So when we talk about how bad Republicans are at PR and messaging, they're doing pretty decent on this one. And kudos to John Thune, the Senate Republican leader, who's putting them on the spot today. It's Thursday as we record this. I don't know how this is playing out, but he's putting them on the spot, making them vote on whether or not they want to fund the military, to pay military service members and their families their paychecks. So Republicans are pushing on this and actually doing a decent job in the PR battle, because the reality is Republicans are pushing a clean continuing resolution. It's Democrats who are pushing another $1.5 trillion in spending, when, by the way, they were all about the deficit just a couple months ago. Now they want another $1.5 trillion added to spending before they'll agree to reopen the government for a 2-month continuing resolution. I mean, it's ridiculous and laughable. So this is the battle going on. And listen, again, everything's a PR battle in politics. If you're a Republican in Illinois, you've got to be pushing that narrative. You've got to be parroting what the NRSC, what Thune, what some of our candidates like Tracy are putting out about this. We've got to be pushing the narrative, because if the voters blame Democrats for this, it will help us in next November. If they blame Republicans for this, it will hurt us next November. This is a big PR fight, and right now it's neck and neck. We got to do our part as Republicans to win this fight.
Yeah, and let me preface by saying I may have missed something, but I only heard the word shutdown one time on the floor this week in Springfield. I didn't hear anybody else mention it. And I'm saying that including the Freedom Caucus. I mean, there was so much going on. We didn't even really get on the horn about the message. But Ryan Spain, now, to be fair, I don't think he did a very good job of communicating it. But Ryan Spain attempted to tie in the government shutdown to what the Democrats were doing in Springfield this week. But that's it. We totally missed the ball. We didn't talk about it at all other than that. So, I mean, we missed an opportunity. We'll see. Hopefully it's not shut down anymore in 2 weeks. Hopefully the Democrats have come to their senses and it's open in 2 weeks. But we only heard it one time in Springfield this week.
Yeah, interesting.
Well, and the Democrats have been making a lot of, missteps on this, especially that Schumer quote where he said, every day this gets better for us as Democrats. And it's like, well, people are trying to figure out how to pay their bills because of the shutdown that you guys instituted. I mean, the Republicans voted to keep it open, right? It was only Democrats and Rand Paul that voted to close it. So whose fault is it?
Yeah, and I think it's for our audience, again, I'm going to get a little bit in the weeds. I'm not saying to explain it the way I'm about to explain it, because I'm going to give you extra information as our audience. Tighten this up, but you need to understand what it is Democrats are fighting for here. These, ACA subsidies. When they talk about ripping away, when Democrats talk about ripping away healthcare, quadrupling costs for healthcare, here's what you've got to be able to explain. I'm giving you the full details. You make it more succinct, or I'll help you with it. But Lane's going to in post bring up on screen what you've got to understand here. Here's a chart that's really helpful for you. What you've got to understand is that these subsidies that are being talked about are not the original Obamacare subsidies. They are the additional subsidies that were passed during COVID to help people during COVID. That's what we're talking about here. If you see in this graph, you can see the subsidies, or the enrollees share is that yellow part of the graphs. And our guests right now aren't seeing this, so I apologize to you guys. But if you're watching this, you see the amount that people who enroll in Obamacare on the marketplace, on the exchange, how much they pay year over year from 2014 till now. During COVID, there were additional credits that were issued to help people get through the pandemic. That blue part, that's what's being fought about. But there are two things here. Number one, it's reasonable to go back to where we were prior to COVID. COVID is over. That's number one. But number two, look at how much, as healthcare costs have exploded, as working families are paying more and more and more. My health insurance for each member of my family just went up another $100 this coming year, more than $100 each of us this coming year. Working families are being buried in health insurance and healthcare costs. And yet, look again at that chart. Lane, bring it up again. Look at that chart. You see how the costs to people who are on Obamacare have barely ticked up since 2014. It hasn't even kept up with inflation. The percentage that we, the taxpayers, were paying to cover those enrollees in Obamacare was 68.4% way back in the day. Now it's 80.3%. That's only if these subsidies are let expire. It's even more than that if they continue these subsidies. That is what is unsustainable. It is a situation where a select few are getting basically almost free health care, and the rest of us, the vast majority of the working families in this country, are footing the bill. And that's what we have to point out here, is that right now, taxpayers are footing the bill for over 90% of the health care of the people who are on the marketplace, who are on Obamacare. That is not sustainable. So again, I'm giving you more details so you understand that much information. You just lost your whole audience. So don't copy paste what I just said, but this graph could be very helpful to utilize and talk about the fact that this is a reasonable, going back to what the subsidies used to be before COVID. It's a balanced approach where we're still giving them tremendous benefits. They're only paying 20% of the cost. That's still a huge help to lower income families, but we can't continue to make working families foot the bill when we can't afford our own health care right now. That's what's going on here. That's what Democrats are fighting about in DC. That's why they won't let the government reopen. Maybe we get a policy expert on here in a week or two, who can explain that much more succinctly, because I am admittedly not a policy expert, but hopefully that information helped inform our audience. All right, we got a couple quick topics here before we close down with our final topics of the week. These are this one is especially more of a Collin topic. So Donald Trump did not get the Nobel Peace Prize. I don't know if any of you are surprised by that or not surprised by that. Honestly, I don't really care. Here's why I'm bringing it up. I'm bringing it up for this reason. I've been thinking about this for a long time, frankly, for years, that if you're a Democrat, you get to have all the late night comedians talk about how amazing you are. SNL makes you into a god in their skits. The media treats you like a public servant, and your motives are always pure. Everybody fawns over you. You get to be the protagonist in every movie and every TV show. If you're a Republican, you are always the villain. You are always evil, whether it's in popular culture, in the media. You will not get awards. The reality is, if you're a Republican, you will not get awards, other than maybe your local Republican club might give you a Lifetime Achievement Award, and that's fine. But the reality is, you will never be popular. You will never get rewards if you're a Republican. I've got some thoughts about that, but I just want to open it up to you guys on what's your takeaway on that, or maybe you just want to talk about the Nobel Peace Prize. I don't know, but the reality is, you're just not going to get a Nobel Peace Prize if you're a Republican. I don't care if you bring peace to the entire planet. planet, they will find somebody else to give it to. That's not me saying Trump should have gotten it, because I don't follow it. I don't know. I don't care. So just pointing out that if you're in this business as a Republican because you want recognition, you are not going to get fulfilled, because it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Any thoughts, or is that just a Collin rant?
Well, I'll just say this real quick. It's funny you say that, especially in Illinois, because if you read Politico or whatever, it's like the Environmental Council or the Equality Illinois names Kelly Cassidy, all of these alphabet mafia organizations that hand out all these awards to their favorite crazy woke leftist that hates America. But yeah, I mean, as Republicans, you're going to get the Farm Bureau Activator. You're going to get ABAY, Illinois Chamber Eagle, like you're going to get all of those, right? But outside of the people that tend to be center right or at least pro business or whatever, yeah, I mean, just you're looking at you're looking at very, very narrow scope on that. It's pretty hilarious. Like I said, I read all of these crazy organizations that name all these awards, and I'm thinking like, hey, it's fine. I don't want your stinking awards. I don't want these people's awards in Springfield, because most of them are crazy.
I mean, there is something to be said for the fact that Republicans, like, we kind of like being unpopular. So, like, if you start giving us awards, we might feel a little weirded out by that. I mean, someone like a Collin Moseley, like, I don't know, someone gives him an award, I don't know what he's going to be able to do with himself all weekend. He likes, like Chris, like, these guys like to be hated.
Not in this to make friends.
What wasn't it a technical issue too? I mean, technical in the stance that it was done in January, and it wasn't possible.
Yeah, the reality is, I mean, the odds were slim simply because of the time frame. But to be clear, the individual who came out and announced, who was getting it and who wasn't, when a question came from the press, that individual, and I think in some of their quotes was like, that Trump lacks integrity. So, like, it wasn't just a technical reason why they didn't give it to him. There was a political reason as well.
Yeah. Or they gave it to Obama, like, on the first day of his presidency, right? So why not give it to Trump? I mean, it's just par for the course, like you said. I mean, the Democrats get the awards, they get the attention, they get the praise, and the Republicans are kind of left out in the cold. But because somebody will step up and change that.
The assumption is always that when a Democrat does something, they have good intentions, even if their actions are wrong. And when a Republican does something, the assumption is always that their intentions are wrong and they are bad people. And I think this is our problem right now, is like, I am really pushing for the people on my side of the aisle to not look at the other side as evil and know that their intentions in many cases are positive and are meant the right way. They just are wrong on policy. They're doing it the wrong way. But it's really hard to do when my side is constantly looked at as evil, when these are some of the best people I've ever met, some of the most salt of the earth good people I've ever met, and they're getting ripped to shreds because someone doesn't like their policy. It's not the same. We're not held to the same standard.
Well, next year it'll be, didn't Joe Biden set the stage for this, and he deserves a Nobel Peace Prize?
That's unfortunately, I could see that happening, man.
One thing I think in relation to Collin's point regarding SNL and late night talk shows, and this is something I've said for a long time, is that Republicans are just not cool. Republicans are great people. You know what I mean? You meet your average Joe Republican, they're a nice guy. Maybe Trump deserves a Nobel Peace Prize, maybe it doesn't. But when it comes to the end of the day, Democrats play the media a lot better than they play social media. They play standard forms of media a lot better than Republicans do. In this state, what the coolest Republican is? Steve McClure. I think Steve McClure does a great job of being just a cool guy who also happens to be a Republican. He's like the most interesting man in the world. He's like an extra in Hollywood movies too. Like, this guy's awesome. That's the type of stuff you want to see from like cool Republican candidates. And that's what Trump kind of did when he first started running for office. Is this guy was a showman. He was on SNL. He was at all the talk shows, and he's funnier than hell. So Trump kind of breaks that narrative a little bit. But Republicans in general, I think you just kind of get naturally cool, not artificially cool. Don't give this hello fellow kids stuff. No, we don't want that.
How do you do, fellow kids?
Chris, I'm really confused. You said Republican, then you said Steve McClure, and you totally lost me.
All right.
Boo. Sorry. So let me close this topic with this. It just brought up a thought. What if we gave out our own awards? What if we had an event every year in Illinois for Republicans? We made it fun. We made it interesting, had a red carpet, made it like an award show, and gave out awards. Because you know what? it is tough being a Republican, and it would be nice to actually have a night where Republicans are treated like the public servants and the good intentioned people that they are. Got a chance to come together. You aren't going to get attacked left and right. We're going to have some fun. We're going to give out some awards, make some jokes, have a good night, dress up. Like, what if we just did it for it? Because no one else is going to give us awards. Like, I'm just throwing it out there. I'd be willing to help put something together. I'd be willing to help pay for it. Like an annual event that we do only for Republicans, that we just have some fun and recognize the hard work and the accomplishments. In Illinois, there are very few accomplishments for Republicans. I get it. But you know what? We got to build from somewhere. And there's such this lack of hope and lack of positivity and frankly, lack of support for each other in our party that maybe a step in the right direction would be to just have a night where we set it all aside and just all come together and have some fun, give each other some awards, tease each other a little bit. I don't know. I can't do it myself, so I'm putting it out there. If anybody else is interested, email me, text me. Don't call me, but I'm a millennial. I don't like calls, but email me, text me, shoot me a message on social media. I think there could be something here, but I'm not going to just do it myself. So if you think this is a good idea, let me know.
The Freedom Caucus network nationwide actually does. We have an annual summit in Dallas every year, and we do just that. We have a good time, give awards out, make fun of each other, and it's a morale booster. It's a good time.
Yeah, well, maybe it's something worth thinking about in Illinois. So shoot me a note if you agree. And if I get no notes, then fine, we won't do it, because I'm sick and tired of coming up with good ideas in Illinois, paying for it out of my own pocket, and then people going, oh, you shouldn't have done that. Well, then fine. I'll spend my money on my beautiful wife and my amazing kid, and you all can go do your own thing. All right, last thing here. This is just here because, I don't know, we got to talk about it. Pillowgate is now a word in our lexicon, because for those who didn't follow along to this, it was a minor story, but I think we talked about it a little bit ago. I don't know all the details. I bet you, Collin, you probably know this like the back of your hand. I think it was like 24 grand was spent by McCombie on decorating some of the House leadership's government offices, and it was spent with Norine Hammond's husband. And I'll admit, when we talked about it on previous episodes, I said it was mostly a nothing burger, and I will stand by that. That said, October 15th was National Pillow Day, because apparently there's a day for everything. And some of Norine Hammond's opponents came together at the steps of the Capitol and had like a big thing. They had like pillows, they had like printed up things. We'll have Lane bring up a photo so people can see what we're talking about. And they attacked Norine Hammond for this. Obviously, there's a candidate running against Norine in the primary there in House District 94. They made a whole thing of it. I don't know. Honestly, will this by itself move the needle? No, I mean, it was ridiculous, but it was funny. It was entertaining. And this is kind of the thing we're pushing Republicans to do with their guerrilla tactics, is be interesting, be entertaining, be a little funny. Yeah, sure, I rolled my eyes when I saw it, but it also made me chuckle, and it made the podcast, so maybe it worked. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Well, it gets more interesting, because part of why I think it resurfaced is there were some people looking for answers, and those answers haven't been given as to whether or not it was true or what. I mean, it's a FOIA, that's public information. And then we found out later this week that supposedly Tony's paid some of the money back out of her campaign. That's unconfirmed, but it was out of her mouth this week. And so we'll see what happens there. But I mean, yeah, I wasn't involved with the press. The Freedom Caucus wasn't involved with the pillow thing.
Tom DeVore seemed to be the main speaker there.
Right.
There were some other people who were there involved. The head of the Hancock County Republicans, which that's a substantial county in Norine Hammond's district, was there, and she spoke out, and she seemed pretty honked off. I watched the video. We've talked about House District 94. Maybe that's just where we go with this, but we've talked about 94 last week. That for those who are saying this is just another Tom DeVore candidate, because he's obviously got candidates in various districts, and most of them aren't really super serious candidates, and DeVore's PAC has a few grand in it. I mean, it's not really a serious thing. That's not who this candidate is in 94. I mean, the reality is there's a real race in 94, and I think that's the big takeaway here, is that this isn't just sort of a Tom DeVore race. Local Republicans are frustrated with Hammond, and they are lining up behind a challenger. This is definitely a race that people are going to want to keep an eye on, because this one's not going to go away.
And can I also just say this, like, to the point of 94th, like, I don't want to get in the middle of this primary on this program, but like, this is what happens, right? This is sort of the ideological juxtaposition going on in our party right now. Is Norine's been there for a long time. She's voted for tax increases. she's on blah, 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 blah. And so this is what happens. You get it. And it just so happens that this primary, I know Charlie's got an opponent, whatever, but this is it. This is the primary to watch in this cycle for sure. And let's be honest, it's the result of the dichotomy of our party right now. This will be a huge win or loss depending on how it goes.
Yeah, I just, my big thing is I want us to know what's happening on the ground for our audience, because most people watching this aren't in or near 94, and the framing from Capitol Facts and those people who want to sort of cover for the House Republican leader on this one are all trying to say it's Tom DeVore. He's a Democrat. He's trying to screw the party. Listen, Tom and I have had our fights both publicly and privately. We go back and forth over text. Sometimes we're on the same side in battles and sometimes we're not. And we let each other know it. We are brutal to each other. That's not what this is. This race did not evolve from Tom DeVore. He's gotten involved because why wouldn't he? He hates Norine Hammond. But that's not what this race is. I've talked to a number of people so that I can figure out what the heck is going on here. And this originated locally. This is local frustrations with Norine. This is not DeVore wasting Republican resources here. This is a real battle. And as you just said, Moseley, this is a bit of what we're facing as a party right now is sort of this kind of fight. So it's definitely one people should keep an eye on. And you know what? If you've got a preference, get involved. Go for it. I have no dog in the fight. I'm just going to watch it and report on it. But I just want people to understand this isn't how it's being framed by people on the left. As Collin said, this is going to be a real fight. Listen, I will say, I said it last week, Norine was on our show for a live episode we did, and she did great. That's all I know about her. She did great on the episode. I was glad to have her. That's it. That's all I know about it. So I'm going to watch and see what happens.
I think the real lesson here, fellas, is if you're going to buy, would you say, $24,000 of decorative pillows from one of your members' husbands, make it a little bit more subtle.
Yeah, I mean, the optics of that, I said it when we talked about this the original time, they all decorate their offices. That's a pretty common thing. So that's why I said this just isn't that big of a deal. But I think I said it then. The optics weren't super great, and they aren't super great now. You got to be smarter than that politically, and that tends to be kind of our frustration with the House Republicans. Is they've gotten a lot better. I'll give them credit; they've gotten a lot better, but many times they don't seem to think through the political ramifications of actions, and then at some point they pay the price.
A lot of the things that were on those invoices, the other members aren't allowed to buy out of their budgets. You're not really allowed to decorate your office as a regular member out of your state budget, but leadership either can or did regardless of that. So some folks were questioning that too. But yeah, I think the bigger story, the bigger beef is the fact that it was of who it was and the timeline next to her leadership vote. So it's just kind of a perfect storm. There's enough crap there to be made a story out of is what it. But
and I think this is where I want to end here. Well, two things. One, just because I love tweaking Tom. Tom, if you're going to do a Facebook Live, could you mirror your camera? Because they had like a check and graphs and pillows with writing on it. Clearly work went into it, but then the video was flipped. So you couldn't read anything. Come on, man. You're better than that. Can't wait to see what text messages I get because of that. But the real reason I want to end on this topic, and part of why I brought it up, is regardless of how you feel about Norine Hammond or the fights of the party or Tony McCombie, I don't care. I don't care about that. I really just want to point out that this was fun and interesting. And you know what? As Chris said in our last topic, Republicans are so bad at being interesting. We're so bad at being fun. We're so bad at being creative. And the only thing I'll say was, you know what? I didn't know it was National Pillow Day. This was a super creative thing to do. Does it move the needle? Probably not. Didn't get a lot of press coverage. But at the end of the day, this is the kind of thing that I want Republicans to be looking for, because we start out behind against the Democrats in this state. If you think you're just going to line up musket to musket and win elections in the state, you're going to lose like we've been losing. You've got to look for ways to be interesting, to be creative. And regardless of the content of this, whether you like it or not, it was creative. And so to Republicans who are watching this, take that lesson out of this. Go come up with a fun, creative idea. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, but you know what? That's how you get eyeballs, and that's how you win elections. So take that lesson if you don't take anything else out of it. All right, let's close down with our news you can use. We got a handful of things we got to talk about. First, let's start here. Chris Jackowiak's favorite politician, Brandon Johnson. Since he lost Madigan, now he just has to look up to Brandon Johnson as his political leader. Brandon Johnson wants to raise taxes even further in Chicago. They're facing, as we've talked about, a significant deficit in the city of Chicago, and now he's going to deliver on his promise to challenge the ultra rich and corporations to pay their fair share. This is a cloud tax. This is apparently an amusement tax, a whole bunch of other little taxes, but the real thing here is a revival of Chicago's head tax. And all the business associations, for once, you're seeing them fight back. They rarely fight back on Pritzker, but they seem to love fighting back on Johnson. I wonder what we could do in Illinois if they fought back on Pritzker just as hard, but whatever. You saw IRMA, you saw IMA, the Chamber, Civic Federation. There were a couple others here. The Chicago Chamber, Chicagoland Chamber, all came out against the head tax. It is a horrible idea in a city that is already struggling to keep businesses, let alone attract businesses. It's an awful idea. And Johnson's head tax, he took it what was before and vastly increased it. This will be a horrible thing for business in the city of Chicago. So they're rightfully pushing back. Chris, since this is news you can use, we got to do it fast. So what are your thoughts on this?
Far be it from me to condemn anybody's ideas of how to make the rich pay more taxes. As you know, I'm a big supporter of that. But in any case,
a head tax is not to the rich.
I know I'm being facetious here. In any case, this is one of the problems with the city of Chicago is when you've got numbnuts Brandon Johnson as mayor of Chicago, and the economy is going down the tubes, and this city's finances are going down the tubes. Like this is the stuff that ends up happening. Okay, so I always fall back to what Mike Quigley said in regards to the city of Chicago's finances. Things are going to get really bad unless the city starts doing some illegal stuff. So that's just, and Brandon Johnson an idiot to begin with. So that's why you're seeing him lash out here. It's the rich's fault. They're not paying their fair share. That's why the city's dead broke. No, the city's dead broke for a million other reasons, Brandon, one of which is because you're an incompetent mayor. So, I mean, I don't even think this is going to go anywhere because Brandon doesn't even have support amongst the council anymore. So we'll see.
No, we'll see. Next one here, let's talk about continuing to be anti-business. Let's go to the state level, where the state of Illinois is now suing State Farm, a significant employer in our state and a big driver of the Bloomington economy. And yet here we go, the state of Illinois is suing State Farm because they want access to their rates, and they continue to believe, even though it's not legal, but they continue to believe that Illinoisans are being paid for Texans and, the floods and the problems in other states. It's not happening. State Farm has said it, and they can't do that. But regardless, Illinois continues to be so anti-business that now we're suing one of the major employers in our state. Welcome to Illinois. We would love it if you would come to our state to do business, and we may or may not sue you, but please come here and do business here. We'd love to have you. All right, let's go to this next one. Lane will bring this up on in post, this graph. But Illinois has the third worst rainy day fund in the entire country. A study was done by Pew where they researched how long could states last on their rainy day fund. Illinois could last 15.7 days. That is third worst in the entire country. So every week there's a new metric, a new graph, a new something going out where Illinois is like first worst, second worst, third worst. Here's another one. We give it out to you. Use this to your advantage. Put it out on your socials. Use it in your fundraising. Use it in your campaigns. It's another area where the state of Illinois is among the worst because that's just what we do in Illinois, apparently.
The rainy day fund always makes me laugh when it gets brought up in the governor's budget address or whatever. Rainy day fund, it's pouring. Like, how much more worse does the storm have to get in Illinois? I mean, how much higher? How many $1 billion of pension liability do we need? For it to be raining? It's raining. So the fact that Illinois even has a rainy day fund is absurd because, to your point, 15 days, but we're really in the red. We have no rainy day fund if you consider the fact that we're in the red. So it's a total joke and a complete gimmick, really, for the governor to pretend to be fiscally responsible.
Just like he keeps pointing to the credit upgrades, even though we still have the worst credit rating in the country. But, ignore that part of it. All right, let's go to this one. Senate Bill 2684. Laura Fine has put this in. I get it. She's just trying to whack insurance companies to help her in her race for Congress. But here's the reality. It's a ridiculous bill. I opened it up and I read it. This bill would make it illegal for homeowners insurance companies to use any money they collect from policyholders, which is their revenue, any of that money they can't use for marketing, they can't use for lobbying, they can't use for paying their executive employees. None of that money can be used for any of that. Again, this is just designed for her to be able to put it in mail pieces, but it was an actual bill filed by a Democrat in Illinois. And this would make it so homeowners insurance companies would just get out of Illinois, because this, I looked it up, doesn't exist anywhere else in the country, for good reason, because the only revenue these companies are bringing in is the revenue they get from policyholders. They've got to be able to spend it on marketing and on operations. That's how a business survives. But the fact is, we have so many of these Democrats down in Springfield who have never worked in business, run a business. They don't know how they operate. So they put something like this out there. It looks good in a TV ad, but the reality is it's horrible legislation. It's a bad bill. And so I pointed out on the podcast. All right, let's go to this one. A lodge, a chapter of the Fraternal Order of Police, has called for the Department of Corrections acting director to be removed. If you've watched any episodes of this podcast, you've heard over the last 2 or 3 months some of the awful things that have been going on in the Department of Corrections and the many, many problems that have been happening. Well, Lodge 263 has had enough, and they're calling for LaToya Hughes to be immediately removed from that position. They cited violent and drug-related incidents at multiple state prisons in 2025. There's a number of stories here. I don't have time to read them all, so just watch some of our previous episodes and you'll see some of the awful things happening at Pritzker's Department of Corrections. It is about time heads roll for just how awful things are going. I think Pritzker should be the one who is removed from office next year because of how horribly he's running the state of Illinois, whether it's DCFS, the Department of Corrections, or anything else in this state. But I think it is right for groups to call out that the head of Department of Corrections should probably take responsibility for how awful things are going at IDOC.
Yeah, I think people see my plate carrier. I mean, I work in law enforcement outside of politics. And just to speak with some authority on this, LaToya Hughes sucked when she was chief of staff. She's a terrible director. This is what happens when you put a restorative justice social warrior in charge of a corrections department. You get a bunch of social justice warrior policies, and then your staff get assaulted, and there's no correcting being done of behavior. It's a complete disaster.
Yeah, it's bad going on. What's going on there? And I love that the party, Democrats, the party who care about, the people who are justice impacted. You'd think they'd care what's happening in the Department of Corrections, but they don't actually care. They care enough that it goes on a TV ad or a mail piece, but to actually help these individuals who are being put through these situations, no, don't worry about it. All right, we're almost done here with our news you can use. Let's talk about Stellantis. So the good news, and I want to be clear, this is great news for the Illinois economy, especially in the Rockford region, that Stellantis has finally agreed that they are going to reopen the Belvedere plant. They're going to put people back to work there. That's good news, and we've got to be clear that that is good news for the region's economy. Here's what we got to be clear about, though, because there's some major catches here. Number one, what Pritzker and Democrats promised we were going to get was a $5 billion investment. What we're actually getting is a $600 million investment. Now, I will take $600 million, but you know what? Pritzker got credit for the $5 billion. Let's talk about the fact that this is less than 20% of that, what we were actually promised. You got to remember that back in 2019, 5,000 people were employed at that plant. This is going to employ about 3,000, maybe 3,300. So we're not even going to get back to what we were back in 2019. And oh, by the way, you didn't see this in any of the American reporting. Well, Bloomberg, but this came from Canada because apparently Canada was promised, Ontario was promised, and they're in their Brampton facility. They were made certain promises, but because of tariffs, that's now all being shifted to Rockford. So I'd like to know how much of this is the result of those tariffs that Pritzker and the Democrats seem to hate and say are the worst thing for the American and Illinois economy. How much of that is actually the reason why this has actually finally happened? Because based on what I'm seeing here in Bloomberg, tariffs were a major reason why this announcement's happening in Belvedere and it isn't happening in Brampton, Ontario. So some key things for people to be aware of regarding Stellantis reopening. But the number one thing is workers up there are going to be put back to work, and that's a good thing. But I do think we need to know the full story here. That's why I'm putting that out. All right. Last thing there. So let's go to our OG and Clown of the Week. What do you guys got? Praise, scorn from the last week. Let's have a little fun to close on the episode. We've talked a lot of policy this week, so let's end with some fun.
Well, I got to give a Clown of the Week nomination to Katie Stewart because on Columbus Day, she posted a graphic, celebrating Columbus Day and, all of that. And she got so much backlash from her own supporters because as a Democrat, you're not allowed to celebrate Columbus Day, that she deleted the post and then made a new post about Indigenous Peoples Day. So I don't know who dropped the ball on that one, but it's funny to see.
That's well deserved. I know I looked, and you look at like all the Democratic U.S. Senate candidates, it was all Indigenous Peoples Day, Indigenous Peoples Day, no mention of Columbus Day. You look through a lot of the Democratic leaders and candidates throughout the state, it was all Indigenous Peoples Day and very few mentioned Columbus Day. So it seems to be a pretty common thing at this point that if you're a Democrat in elected office, especially in far left Democratic Party Illinois, you can't even recognize the national holiday that is Columbus Day. You're not even allowed anymore. Chris, you okay with that?
No, I'm not. I think Columbus Day deserves recognition, and it's sad that you can like someone like Katie Stewart, who's in a pretty swingy district, is gonna be like, I was gonna support Columbus Day, but my radical left supporters said that they were offended by it, so I got to support Indigenous. I don't know why we can't do both. Like, why can't we honor the Native Americans, and why can't we honor Columbus on the same day? Like, why can't we?
It seems reasonable. Maybe detach them on the same day. We don't need to compete. Let's have a day for each.
Right.
Let's celebrate each of them. I think they both deserve to be celebrated. But in politics, it's always this either or. You're either on this side or you're on that side. And the average American is like, okay, I'm on neither of your sides.
Well,
Yeah,
it's
just
because
separate.
Indigenous People Day is as a reaction to Columbus Day. So you can't say both because the reason why we have Indigenous Peoples Day is because we're not supposed to have Columbus Day.
All right, what else you guys got? It's a good start. Well done, Michael. What else you guys got?
Mike, you got.
There's a list of candidates for Clown of the Week or Clown of the Year, really.
Hit us.
Chris's favorite candidate, Brandon Johnson. Your favorite candidate, Collin, would be with the governor. I can't get enough of those two clowns. But the third one is not even probably the biggest one, maybe of the week. It's not even the state of Illinois. It's the Senate candidate out in California, Katie. Last name
Katie Porter.
Katie Porter, thank you. She should get an honorable mention there as well. But
listen, as anybody who has been a staffer, you have probably dealt with some of these awful politicians and the stuff that we typically put up with from a lot of these candidates. Like, it never sits the news, but being a staffer is one of the hardest jobs. It's why I don't do it anymore. It's one of the hardest jobs out there because you're just dealing with, many cases, the worst of the worst. And so when it finally hits the news every once in a while, I just honestly think that she should be Clown of the Month, Clown of the Year. But we should also give just a little love to staffers. You have to put up with that BS on a daily basis because it is not an easy job.
Which is, I don't get it. I mean, I just apologized to one of the folks at the township the other night. I kind of reacted at a meeting in an abrupt manner with her. These are the people that make you look good. I mean, and the ones that can tell stories when they're no longer working there anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So I don't understand that from candidates, but yeah, she certainly qualifies.
That's a good addition. Well done.
I have a clown and an OG. My OG of the week is the peace president, baby. I mean, come on. Like, this is historic. This is a huge deal. This is going to save lives. So Donald Trump, OG of the week, peace president. The undocumented.
And to be clear, I think that has to be just a given. I mean, I said it earlier. I don't care whether it's a Democrat or a Republican who brings peace in that region. Doesn't matter. We need peace. So put politics aside on something like that. So yeah, I'm with you, Moseley.
Honestly, too. I mean, just major props. I never do this. Major props to the Democrats that put their ego and partisanship aside and actually said, "Hey, look, Trump, good job." Like, okay, fair enough. So props to them.
Yeah, I saw Rom and a few others did that, and you're right. I think, yeah.
Okay, my clown of the week is State Representative and candidate for Congress, LaShawn Ford, because Tuesday in veto session on Charlie Kirk's birthday, Adam Niemer gets up and gives a beautiful speech about Charlie Kirk and supporting naming a day after him. He's an Illinois native, and blah blah blah. Then LaShawn Ford gets up and says, I'm going to surprise all of you, but it was this guy's birthday today, and we really need to honor him for a life that was lost in violence, George Floyd. And it was just totally and completely disgusting because he basically made light of Charlie's assassination to bring forward George Floyd and honor him instead on both of their apparently shared birthday. Total clown move. Disgusting. So LaShawn Ford, you're my clown this week.
Yeah, I didn't hear about that. Thanks for bringing that up.
So I got my OG of the week is the Pope. Pope was driving around the Pope Mobile in Rome the other day, and one of the jokesters in the crowd yelled out, "Go Cubs!" As we all know, the Pope's a White Sox fan, and he yells back, "They lost."
San Bernardino, they lost. Yes.
Isn't it great to have a Pope who is hate watching the playoffs right now, who's getting excited seeing the Cubs lose? In light of that, my first clown of the week, this has nothing to do with politics. I want to get this clear. The following clown has nothing to do with politics. Is Patrick Finkston, because he blocked me on Twitter because I kept taking victory laps after the Cubs lost to the Brewers
in
Game 5 of the NL.
What a weak
blocked
sauce
me
move
on
That's
Twitter
awful.
because I was taking victory laps. Patrick Finkston, you are a clown of the week. You root for a crappy baseball team, and you can't handle the heat from Christian Jackowiak on Twitter.
I mean, listen,
okay?
here's what people got to know about Patrick.
Like,
I have often had great conversations with Finkston, but he also does like to troll. And lately in my text messages, he just wants to troll. And he trolled me and Michael this last week. And so, if you're going to be a troll to other people, you got to accept it when they troll back. Like, genuinely, I felt happy for my Cubs fan friends. I'm not like Chris. I actually did feel happy for my Cubs fan friends who their team made the playoffs because my team sucks. I genuinely felt happy for them, and I did want them to succeed. But the only time that was different was when Finkston was trolling me. So fine, I trolled you back and said, "Go Brewers." Like, if you're going to be a troll, then if you're going to dish it, you got to take it. So Finkston, I'm going to echo Chris. If you blocked Chris, then that's a clown move, man. You're my clown of the week too.
And in more serious terms, my main clown of the week are all the stupid young Republicans who got wrapped up in this Politico article for saying the most abhorrent things to each other and not expecting that at some point it was going to get leaked to the press. Listen, guys, I understand that the person who leaked this Politico seems to be human scum incarnate. I get it. This guy seems like a huckster. He seems like a sinister operator, whatever. Screw him, okay? But at the same time, one of the lessons they teach you as a wee lad is to trust no one, okay? I don't care how good of friends you are with someone. I don't care who these people you're texting. Never let your guard down that much to where you're saying abhorrent, racist crap in a group chat with other people whose lives are now going to be affected. Their careers in politics irreparably damaged because you guys had to go out there and say the dumbest things imaginable in a group chat, okay? Listen, I'm not going to comment on what the vice president said. I do think that, of course, you should have some expectation of privacy when it comes to being in group chats and things like that. At the same time, you are supposed to be the future of the Republican Party, so you can't expect to get away with doing stupid stuff like that. To those YRs who got wrapped up in this, you are the clown of the week, and so is that charlatan who sold you out to Politico. You both are clowns. Thank you.
Yeah, and understand that, especially when you're a Republican, everything you say is going to be scrutinized, and whether you're taken in context or out of context, whatever it is you say, they're going to shine a spotlight on that and use it to make you look bad. So even if you didn't intend some of the things there, the lesson for those who are watching is you've got to make sure listen, I do communications for a living. So of course it's easier for me, but when I word things, even on this podcast, I am usually intentional about the way that I word it. And when a guest on the podcast words something that could maybe be taken out of context, we try to help them out and clear it up really quickly because that's going to happen. So you can make all the complaints you want. You deserved your fate when you put those words on paper. What else you guys got? Chris, another time where you didn't give Sister Jean some love? I mean, again?
I forgot. I missed her wake yesterday. I wanted to go, but I couldn't because I was working. So thank you, Collin. But yeah, another OG of the week goes to Sister Jean. May she rest in peace. As someone who attended Loyola University Chicago, don't ask me what year I graduated. I can't give you an answer to that. But as someone who attended Loyola University Chicago, her dying affects all of the Rambler community. Anybody who attended LUC, So that woman was a saint. I loved walking through Damon and watching her play solitaire in her little office they had set up for her. So that woman was awesome, and may she rest in peace. And they're 106 years old is phenomenal. You've done everything you could have. She became a national idol, so we would all be so blessed to make it to 106. So God bless Sister Jean. May she rest in peace.
And make it to 106 and have lived your life as full as she did. So, you guys took a lot of my OGs. I've only got one left, but we kind of talked about this earlier where SNL parodied Kristi Noem this last week. And this is something that Chris said it, but we've seen the Trump administration and Trump himself do this really well. Republicans tend to be very bad at this. Instead of cowering and being, oh, I can't believe they made fun of me, like Charlie Kirk did when South Park, made fun of him. Like, own it and turn it around. DHS took that clip and made it into a recruitment ad and owned it. Like, Republicans need to learn this lesson, that you're going to be made fun of. The left's going to come after you. And you've got to stop being so afraid of, oh, they attacked me on the House floor. They said something mean about me on social media. We are so sensitive, and I hate the word, but we're a bunch of snowflakes so often. Like, take a lesson from this. They made fun of her on social media. And instead of letting it become a Sarah Palin situation where it completely defines you, instead you own it and you flip it around and you make it a positive. Republicans have got to get better at that. Take a lesson from Trump. Take a lesson from Kristi Noem and DHS on that. Like, yeah, you're going to get made fun of. Stop being, oh, they hurt my feelings, and own it and turn it around and have some fun with it. Don't take yourself so seriously in politics. So that's my OG of the week.
Yeah, honestly, you know what, Chris or Collin, you're absolutely right. Look at the Snow Kings rallies that are coming up this weekend. Trump always gets himself in trouble when he gets a little bit of a red ass and has to defend himself, right? But when he makes fun of things like this, it just kind of slips away and becomes a non-issue. And you said Trump, and he's made fun of the No Kings protests. And when he does it on other issues, you're right. It just kind of slips away. It takes all the steam out of it. And our Republican politicians can learn a lot from that lesson, I believe.
Couple clowns from me. Mike mentioned that, Pritzker's usually my foil, so of course I'm going to go at Pritzker, but I got two things for Pritzker. Abby's going to bring up this image on screen. Listen, I have been very careful not to partake in making fun of JB Pritzker because of his weight, so that's not what this is. But what you're seeing on screen is a video that Pritzker did about, oh, look, see, it's so scary here in Chicago as he wears a bulletproof vest. Like, I'm talking to staffers now and advanced people. Do a better job, because they put Pritzker in a really dumb position. If you see how he's, like, get a bigger vest or wear a different shirt underneath, he just looks ridiculous. This is coming from my wife, Abby, who is the sweetest person on the planet. And she was the one that brought this to my attention and said, he looks absolutely ridiculous. Again, not because of his weight, but because have some common sense here. Like, you should know you're going to become a meme if that's how you dress and that's what you do in the video. You just look ridiculous. So it's a little bit on Pritzker. It's a lot of it on his PR team and his advanced team. You deserve anything you did, or any teasing and making fun of you get for that, because that was just dumb. And then Pritzker making a 1.4 million in a Vegas casino. Listen, I get it, whatever. He played some games, he had some fun, but it looks really bad when you're raising taxes on gamblers in Illinois and then you go jet off to Vegas and go make 1.4 million on blackjack. Just a bad look. We talk about bad optics in politics. Kudos to the Bailey campaign for making fun of him for it. He deserves it. It was just, again, tone deaf, stupid. Let's see here. I've got a couple of things for elected officials playing bad, being bad. Let's go to Evanston. A former school chief from Evanston Skokie in District 65, Devin Horton, and 2 Chicago Public Schools administrators were indicted this week for embezzlement and wire fraud for $81,000 at least in kickbacks from employees. It was a whole thing, and deserves to be called out. So one of my clowns. My other clown is at CHA, Chicago Housing Authority. They're constantly having problems. Deborah Parker, one of their commissioners, it was revealed this week in a report. I think it's WBEZ did an investigation, and her let's see here. Daughter, sister, and boyfriend have all made millions off of CHA while she's been on the board there. Gee, I wonder. They always said, oh, it's just coincidence that this has happened. And you look at these companies before she was a board member, they had revenues of like hundreds of dollars. One had $800 in revenue. And then after she became a commissioner, one's got $22 million, one's been paid $15 million, and like 90+% of the revenue has come from the Chicago Housing Authority. They have problem after problem after problem there. You talk about a boondoggle government organization, government whatever. CHA absolutely takes the cake on that. And my last one here, the No Kings rallies were brought up. I'm going to have Lane bring this graphic up on screen. But for those who try to tell me that the League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan group, the National League of Women Voters is a co-sponsor of the No Kings rallies this weekend. And here in Illinois, you see the Glen Ellen chapter of the League of Women Voters. On this, you see this on screen. They are a co-sponsor of a No Kings rally with a bunch of Democratic organizations, indivisible organizations. Stop telling me that the League of Women Voters is some bipartisan, nonpartisan group. They are as partisan far left as they come. And I'm sick and tired of being told, oh, no, you're not, that's not the truth. If you're going to sponsor this with Dems and Indivisible, you are now a arm of the Democratic Party. Stop pretending like you're not. All right, closing thoughts. Chris and Michael were actually awake this week, so I'm going to have our guests kick us off. Mike, your final thoughts for the week.
I was telling Chris earlier, my final thoughts are obviously, and it's probably been talked about a lot of time on this program. I had a couple real nice experiences the last couple of weeks. I had a number of young Republicans come to me and ask for help in sponsoring, developing, starting a young Republican organization in Will County and Southern Cook County, essentially what it is. And it really was kind of inspiring to listen to them talk. We talked a lot about how you're going to do this, the setup of it, but I asked them their why in the second meeting, and the why was, as young people, we look at a dismal future in the state and our region, and we want to elect candidates that's going to change that and make that a positive one. So you talk about the PR message, right? We talked a lot about that earlier. And you know what? Honestly, that was very inspiring to me. And that's where we need to go. I think there's, Trump has pulled some of those people, but I think there's some other people out there that, young people out there that we need to start getting them and getting them inspired and getting them out there. And I think we can really, really kind of pick up momentum potentially in this state for some victories, if not this next one, but maybe some on down the road. So that's just kind of my thought there. And kudos to them, and look forward to getting involved with them and helping them out.
I love that you're helping out the next generation. I know when I started the YRs, there were a few people in the party who helped me out. Most of them worked against me. So I still to this day give credit and thanks and kudos to those who actually helped when I was a punk kid in politics. And I know these kids will forever be grateful for your help, Mike. So thanks for doing that. Moseley, your final thoughts.
Well, I think just to go off politics for a second, I love this time of year because I think things begin to slow down a little bit and we can all take time and enjoy it with our families as we approach the holidays. We've got one more week of veto session to really knuckle down and beat back these bad policies and message aggressively. But I can tell you that when we get past veto session in November and December, I'm looking forward to time with family to remind me what's most important, and also to remind me why we do this. My family, my child, my born and unborn child, are the reason why I fight as hard as I do. And so just thankful for chances to reflect on that and recall why I have conservative values.
Thank God for Kate. I mean, they don't have your looks, thankfully, at least the first one. Let's hope the second one comes out looking good.
Yeah, the second one will be even more blessed. Yeah.
All right, Chris, Michael, you guys actually came this week. I appreciate it. Michael, go ahead. We'll let Chris have the final word.
All right. Well, 10 days left of petitions if you're filing on the first day, and a few more if you're filing later. So keep getting those signatures. If you've got some in your car or at your house or whatever that you need to get to a candidate, get it to him, because this is the end right here. And I know there's a lot of people that are nervous or they're trying to figure out what's out there, and just get it done. Get it in the mail or immediately, or hand it over to the right person, because if we don't get these people on the ballot, we're not going to have much to talk about next year.
Yeah, I like how you could tell Moseley focuses mostly on policy because he's like, once veto is done, things slow down. And I'm looking at Chris and Michael going, no, it doesn't.
Yeah, right.
All right, Jackowiak, what do you got?
I feel like every week Collin like gives some subtle jab at Butler and we're not really showing up lately. And at the end of the episode, he's like, you guys showed up today. You guys get to go second. I think this is I think we're getting way more crap from you than we're actually giving back, Collin. I don't really like that. But you know what? I appreciate
give it back.
One,
I mean, come on.
I appreciate being the one who brought the heat. I'll echo Butler's thoughts. Listen, on election day, they tell you if you are in line, stay in line. And that's why I'll say if you are circulating, keep circulating. Do not assume that the person you are circulating for is all good. Don't assume that. Assume that your candidate is actually way more behind than they actually are. Okay? Because you don't want to find yourself in a situation where it's next week. We'll do this podcast again next week, where it's next week and it's, oh dear goodness, we have not even hit our minimum yet. We really need to get things going. Don't fall into that scenario. For you precinct committee, for you field directors, for you candidates, don't take anything for granted. Go out there, run through that finish line when it comes to petitions. File with way more than you ever could have possibly imagined, because trust me, it'll be so much better when you have a 500 minimum and you show up with 2,000 than when you have a 500 minimum and you show up with 700. It'll actually allow you to sleep in the days after petitions than be paranoid about whether or not you're going to get a challenge. So run through that finish line, keep circulating, and everyone have a wonderful weekend, which I expect to be at the doors getting petitions. Thank you.
I can tell you, Ryan from our team just had a heart attack because if you've got a 500 minimum, that means you're running for state rep, which means you have a 1,500 maximum. So if you've got 2,000, you got to strike some signatures, boy. But I guess you'll just let Ryan deal with that.
There are judge races, certain judge races also have a 500 minimum, Collin. You could also round to some county offices, which have around a 500 minimum.
Around 500. Anyways, we'll let Ryan deal with that in the back end. We'll just all join Moseley putting our feet up, and Ryan can just deal with the packets. Anyways,
putting my feet up.
Special thanks to Collin and Mike. This was an extra long episode. We had fundraising disclosures, we had veto session, plus all the topics for the week. So it was a packed episode. So thank you two for sticking around for a very long episode. Thanks to Lane, who's got a lot of work on the post, not only getting everything ready, but trying to convince Chris to let us have some fun with an image on this. We'll see if he succeeds. To the rest of you, we'll catch you next week in the smoke-filled room. We'll see you guys later.